Hello. I'm sure most of you will know this scene from the film version of Logan's Run. In that society, you get to live for 30 years with a crystal in the palm of your hand that indicates your age. When the crystal runs out, you're told you will be renewed if you participate in the carousel ceremony. Of course, it's a giant con trick. There is no such thing as renewal. The participants are vaporised and that's the end of them. But that brainwashed crowd of young people who've no experience of any sort of a real world, they swallow the story whole and cheer and clap for their immolated friends. Science fiction? Well, let's talk about renewables, should we? Are renewables the energy of the future, or a giant con trick that destroys rather than creates, and has a huge following among certain groups of brainwashed people who really believe that if we are strong, we will be renewed. And I'm going to be reading you a letter from one of my subscribers who is, in his letter, pulling back the curtain on that con. I'm granniopteryx. And before we go any further, please click that like button, check your subscription. Yes, subscriptions do get deleted for some reason. And click the notification button. Okay, so I got a letter, I got two letters actually, from a subscriber. I'll call him Diogenes. And I asked his permission to read the letters and he said, yes, of course you can. And then he also said, I think it's out there that renewables pay only if they are subsidised. So this person, Diogenes, appears to be on the peripherals of the political world and something to do with some sort of science as well. That's just the impression I've got from what he's written to me, and the fact that I think he's some sort of an engineer or scientist is because his spelling is terrible and his grammar is worse. And so the letter I have here is somewhat polished up. I'm sorry about that, Diogenes, but I'm not giving your name out, so I feel like I can do that. Don't worry. To each his own. I'm the English grad, therefore I should have a better English than the average engineer. Not always, of course, but yeah, that's the way it goes. Your speciality is this. I didn't know anything about this, or very little, so hat tip to you, Diogenes. Anyway, this is what Diogenes said. I was involved in renewables. Most are made in China, in huge coal-fired factories. The irony of it. So all those solar panels are made using coal-burning furnaces or whatever, or engines. And there is no data, how strange, on the energy taken to produce them. So it may be that the amount of energy used to produce all those solar panels is far in excess of the energy we're getting out of those solar panels when we're, sort of being all clean and green here in the West. And when they reach end of life, they cannot be recycled. What are we supposed to do with these? I mean, it's all very modern now. In 10 years' time or so, we're going to have a lot of aging solar panels that nobody knows what to do with. Are we going to throw them into the sea or something? I did mention in a previous video about, and I remembered it after, it's called the Beaufort Trench or the Beaufort Dyke, and it's off the coast of Scotland and it's the deepest part of the Irish Sea. It's very deep. And in the 50s, when people weren't thinking ecology too much, the British government was throwing a lot of unused and aging war material into that trench, and the whole thing now is full of a lot of explosives and toxic chemicals, which they thought they'd just get rid of by throwing into the sea. Sooner or later that's going to catch up with us, but that's not what I'm talking about right now. What Diogenes was talking about was solar panels, as opposed to water heating panels, which are passive. Yeah, I think water heating panels, they're much used in sunny parts of the world, and they're probably a fairly good idea. Anyway, certainly solar panels, which need constant cleaning and maintenance, will last about 30 years. So the solar panels to generate electricity last about 30 years. But the inverters last only about 10 years and need to be regularly replaced. Whatever an inverter is. All right, my ignorance. And then he said there is no data to prove they produce more power than it takes to produce the panels and inverters. This is starting to look, as I said, like a giant con trick. Again, because they produce direct current power, the inverters will work only if there's a stable grid. This was the issue that shut down Spain. In reality, you need 100% backup from conventional generation. Now, I really don't know what that means. So I'm guessing it means if the flow is not regular, if there's any sort of a glitch or a slowdown or a stop, then the whole system cannot just reboot itself automatically and it just shuts down, which is what happened in Spain, not only Spain, Portugal, parts of southern France, I believe, a whole load of, it was a true disaster. And remember, there would have, I mean, I haven't heard about this, but I should imagine there had been some deaths because of that, if only in hospitals, but, you know, other things, accidents happening. Anyway, then Diogenes says there was an interesting lady electrical engineer who spoke about the issues with renewables and how the frequency and voltage has critical tolerances before the grid can be lost, which is my guess again, that if the grid is not on a stable level, it cannot dip or peak in any way, because if that happens, it just shuts down and that's the end of it. I wish I had been given a URL, but I'm sure that some of you more dedicated people will be able to find this lady, electrical engineer, and anyone who does know about whom Diogenes is talking, then well, put it in the comments. Okay, and this is how Diogenes describes it. If you described it like a band, the drummer holds the beat. If he goes out of time, then, that's probably meant to be then, isn't it? Let's change that. If he goes out of time, then the music doesn't work. Okay, that makes sense to me. All renewables need a constant state grid, gas turbines or nuclear to maintain it. We have 2 cable supplies from France who have 56 nuclear plants, and there are also 2 gas pipelines from Denmark. So all our solar and wind turbine stuff is backed up by conventional fossil fuel or nuclear power plants, power supplies. Renewables can't work without this sort of support. They are a backing track, not the lead. As for wind turbines, the ones in the North Sea last about 11 years, and the cost is about 6 times that of shore-based. The maintenance is ridiculously expensive and difficult to perform. It takes 4 hours just to get there. So, you know, to maintain these offshore wind turbines, you've got to get out to them first of all. And then, of course, you've got to try doing whatever you're doing from a boat. I assume you're not on the boat while you're doing the maintenance, but still, you've got to get into the turbines from a boat. I hope that makes sense. They are so fragile, Diogenes says. The corrosion is epic, and if the dehumidifier goes down, they have to shut down. I don't know what a dehumidifier is. I suppose it's something to do with water getting into the mechanism. Well, whatever. But you should know that when the dehumidifier on an offshore wind turbine goes down, then the wind turbine has to stop working altogether. At the same time, we have gas under our feet, which we are not using. Right. And then he continues. A guy from and then he gave the name of an established electricity company, told me the 3 original wind turbines at Avonmouth Dock are so corroded they're almost scrap. That's why the that should be hang on, okay. I did correct some of it, but I've missed some. That's why the tenders for the new North Sea areas had no bids. Yeah, I wouldn't know about that, but obviously Diogenes does know. I had many conversations with, and then he talks about a conservative politician of his acquaintance about net zero. Some of the stuff he was given was with the fairies. I am assuming that this Conservative MP knew possibly a bit more about the subject than the civil servants or the various companies thought he knew. For example, he was told that a tidal barrage in Cardiff Bay would produce constant power. Yeah, I always thought that's what tidal barrages would do as well. You see, if I were in that politician's place, I'd have probably gone, yeah, that sounds good. In reality, though, whilst they produce power every tide, the tidal flow is only sufficient to drive the turbines for maybe 3 hours per tide. High and low tide has almost flat water for 1 to 2 hours either side of high and low tide. So there you have the tide going up and coming down, and on the either end of that there's a sort of equilibrium, and those barrages just don't get enough, what they turn or they flap, something like that. Anyway, they don't generate anything. And this MP was one of 60 Conservative MPs who didn't run in the last election, mainly because they couldn't carry on the hypocrisy. Now, actually, I was not aware that so many Conservative politicians had stood themselves down. So I thought I would check that out. Ta-da! This is in the Telegraph, and it says here, all the Tory MPs who stood down at the general election, and this was June 2024. So let's have a look. They give here they are. All the Tory MPs standing down at the general election. Look at that. All of them. That's an unprecedented bailing out of MPs. Just astonishing long list. Now, I don't know about the hypocrisy. I have said I said at the time when Rishi Sunak took over that it was quite obvious that there was a small group at the head of the Conservative Party who were determined to seize power. And they got Liz Truss out the way. They could have handled the Truss situation. I don't think she was wrong, by the way. I think she was probably precipitous. And she did say the Queen advised her to pace herself. I think that those are the words the Queen used. The Queen was a very experienced, the late Queen was a very experienced politician, wasn't she? Anyway, and I became disgusted with the Conservative Party from that time on. So I don't know whether those MPs were standing down because of the hypocrisy over, partly net zero, or whether they were really worried about the cabal that had taken over the Conservatives, using Rishi Sunak as a sort of figurehead. Anyway, that's that's a digression, isn't it? Some of the stuff he was given. Oh, hang on a minute. So he was one of 60 Conservative MPs who didn't run in the last election, mainly because they couldn't carry on the hypocrisy. They are all just puppets repeating what they're told to say. Well, all right, they may have had instructions on various things and they just got fed up of it. There was a time when MPs would have their own minds. They'd represent their own constituencies and they'd all be somewhat independent. Even the Labour ones, although they were always a bit more lockstep idealists. But recently, in the past 30 years or so, the head office of political parties issues instructions and all the MPs have to follow the party line. Or what happens is people like Andrew Bridgham, for instance, they just get thrown out. Anyway, what Diogenes says, unfortunately, until we get someone with power and wealth like Trump, we are likely to carry on in the same track. I don't think Trump's model can be followed in the British political system. Someone will have to think of another way of doing it. The Prime Minister doesn't have the sort of power that a president has. So I think Diogenes is wrong there. Somebody is going to have to come up with something else. He adds this. I've met Nigel Farage and Zia Yusuf. They are extremely guarded in conversation. Yeah, I have to say I've had my disappointments with Reform Party, and I've also said, what else do we have? All we can do really is hope that they don't turn out to be the duds that I am very much afraid they might be. However, that again is another matter. And that's the con trick of the renewables. Let's all cheer for the latest wind farm. Till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.